11 picks, 11 offensive players. And when the Jets traded down from number 10 to number 11, many people thought, me included, that they would take Georgia tight end Brock Bowers. Instead, they go with a tackle. Penn State's Olu Fashanu becomes the latest member of the New York Jets at a time when they were doing everything they can to try to upgrade the offensive line. They added Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses in free agency. Both guys a little older, both guys with a little injury question. You get a fresh guy in there to try to do everything they can to keep Aaron Rodgers upright and in one piece. A surprise, they didn't take Bowers. I wonder how far he's going to go, and I wonder when we're ever going to get a defensive player. What are the defensive players thinking? 11 picks, 11 offensive players. Let's see if the Broncos take a defensive player at number 12. What a crazy roller coaster it's been when trying to figure out what's going to happen with the quarterbacks in the 2024 draft. Not that long ago, there was a question of whether or not 6 would go in the first 13 picks. You got 7 teams that were seriously looking at quarterbacks. We didn't know about the Falcons. What we have so far is 6 in 12. And the Raiders doing the John Travolta thing where they're looking around wondering what the hell. They didn't get a shot at any of them. They thought they'd maybe have a clear opportunity to get Michael Penix Jr. That didn't happen thanks to Atlanta. And now the Broncos with the 12th pick take Bo Nix. There was a thought he'd be around later, but you know what? Sean Payton didn't want to screw around. Sean Payton sees a guy that can be his Drew Brees in Denver. It was something that Sims was all over. Nix to the Broncos. We just thought 12 would maybe be a little high, but you don't want to play around. You play around, you might end up not with the guy that you wanted. The Broncos go all in without having to trade up, staying put. They get Nix. And it makes me think that the talk about J.J. McCarthy was a little bit of a smokescreen. There was supposedly a secret workout with McCarthy, and Peyton Manning was talking on radio in Denver recently about how much the Broncos like McCarthy, and maybe they did. When I first saw the Jets were talking about trading out of 10, I thought, uh-oh, here come the Broncos at 12 to move up to get McCarthy. Instead, they stay put. They get Bo Nix. 6 quarterbacks in 12 spots. That's the most ever. 12 picks, 12 offensive players. Can a defensive player get some love? Maybe with the Raiders at pick 13, we'll find out. Many thought that the floor for Brock Bowers, the Georgia tight end, would be number 10, the New York Jets. When the Jets moved down to 11, I thought that's where they would take Brock Bowers. They passed. The Broncos passed. The Raiders shut out of the quarterback conversation. They get a weapon. Remember, they had Darren Waller, traded him to the Giants. They need that guy in the passing game who can really be a difference maker. And Brock Bowers, regarded as a guy who can be very special at the NFL level and a great value pick. There's that word for the first time. A value pick at 13, because this is a guy arguably better than the 13th pick would suggest. Meanwhile, can we get a defensive player drafted? We'll find out maybe as soon as pick 14. 13 for 13 offensive players. Stay tuned. 14 picks, 14 offensive players. Are you kidding me? Talifuaga from Oregon State, tackle, goes to New Orleans to put some help there around their offensive players who really need to improve this year, starting with Derek Carr. He's in his up or out year in New Orleans. They're in a position where his money's guaranteed this year. After this year, they can move on, and maybe they will. One less excuse, though, with a great young rookie who can come in and help solidify that wall of blockers. Right now in the NFL, defensive line, so much better collectively than the offensive linemen. We have seen multiple offensive linemen go already in the first half of the draft. We are still waiting for that first defensive player. There are teams out there that are licking their chops, teams that didn't have need at the offensive side of the ball. The defensive players are just falling and falling and falling. Inevitably, defensive players will be taken, I think. It took 15 picks, but finally a defensive player taken in the 2024 NFL Draft. Laiatu Latu from UCLA, a guy who at one point was medically retired from football, came back and played. We interviewed him at the Scouting Combine, really liked him. Colts liked him too. Colts making that selection, beefing up a defense in a division and a conference that puts a premium on having the ability to chase around some of the great quarterbacks. Latu could be that guy. Chris Sims has compared him to Jalen Phillips of the Dolphins. Maybe he could be even better than that. Regardless, for the Colts, they got to sit and wait and watch while all those offensive players went. They got the first defensive player in the draft. They probably didn't expect Latu to be available. He was. People saw him as a top 15 pick, and he gets in just under the wire at number 15. First defensive player, 15th overall, Laiatu Latu. The Colts have their guy. 14 straight offensive players to start the draft. 2 defensive players in a row. Laiatu Latu to the Colts at 15 overall. And at 16, Byron Murphy from Texas goes to the Seattle Seahawks. This is a guy that Sims loves. He told us at the scouting combine, I came out swole. Big guy, disruptive, F up the play, creates havoc. That kind of guy you need to have. How many great teams have that guy in the middle who can just throw guys everywhere and create that kind of chaos that allows the other defensive players to go to the ball? So Pete Carroll's gone. He's a defensive guy. They replaced him with Mike McDonald, another defensive guy. They go defense. They get the second defensive player in the draft. I bet they never expected Byron Murphy to be there at number 16. He is now a Seattle Seahawk. The Minnesota Vikings primarily wanted to come out of the first round of the 2024 draft with a quarterback. They got one without having to give up their second round 1 pick, the one they obtained from the Texans several weeks ago. They used that to trade up to number 17 to get edge rusher Dallas Turner from Alabama. And look, that was an area the Vikings needed to address. Marcus Davenport left via free agency after 1 year with the team, and Danielle Hunter, who had been with the Vikings, it seems like forever, went to the Houston Texans. Yes, they've added some guys via free agency, but Dallas Turner is a guy who comes in on a wage scale contract, low price when you consider how valuable a great edge rusher is. And this is a guy that is going to help the defense get a lot better. Can't just be all offense. Vikings need some defense, especially in a division where you've got Caleb Williams now, you've got the Lions in their offense, you got the Packers and what they've been able to do. You need a great player who can chase around the other quarterbacks in the NFC North. The Vikings have that in Dallas Turner. The Los Angeles Rams had defensive tackle Aaron Donald retire not that long ago. They have used their first-round pick since 2016 on the defensive side of the ball. Jared Verse, the Florida State edge rusher, becomes the latest Ram, a guy that will help bolster a defense that is going to be missing Aaron Donald. Yes, they've got some great young talent on that side of the ball. They've got some great young talent on both sides of the ball. And there was some talk about whether or not the Rams would maybe trade up higher into round 1 to try to get their next quarterback after Matthew Stafford. Obviously, that didn't happen. They were reportedly making some calls to that effect earlier in the day. Instead, they stay put and they get one of the top defensive players. Because of that ridiculous run on offensive players, the Rams get a chance to bolster their defense and try to go next level. They had the horrible season after winning the Super Bowl. They turned it around last year. Can they go even farther than they made it in 2023? Jared Verse will be charged with the responsibility of coming in and making a difference for a Rams defense that will need it without Aaron Donald. Pittsburgh Steelers blew up their quarterback depth chart in free agency, moving on from the 3 guys they had last year, bringing in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Now, you've got to protect them. Troy Fautanu, the offensive tackle from Washington, becomes the 20th overall pick in the draft, a guy the Steelers will hope to plug in and help keep that offense going, blocking for the running backs and creating time and opportunities for both Wilson and Fields. And I think we'll see both of them on the field this year. Wilson is the starter, Fields as the Cordell Stewart type option, unless Fields somehow beats out Russell Wilson. Either way, Fautanu joins the fray in Pittsburgh as a guy who will stabilize an offensive line that needs to improve if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be, yet again, a team in contention for a Super Bowl run. Things have been working out perfectly this offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. They entered the draft with no needs. GM Howie Roseman made it clear they can just take the best player they want, and they had one of the best players on their board fall to them all the way to pick number 22, Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback from Toledo, the guy that Chris Sims had as his top cornerback in this year's draft. Clearly, the Eagles did too because he's the first corner taken, and he addresses an area of need for the Eagles, a team that did very well last year until they didn't down the stretch. Once they get straightened out what went wrong in the final few weeks of the season, this is a team that can be in position to contend not just for a division title, but for another Super Bowl run. Just 2 years after they almost won a championship against the Chiefs, they could be laying the foundation to make a serious effort to get back there and maybe win it after a disappointing end to last year. Well, if the Jaguars agreed to trade down from 17 to 23, thinking they would still get LSU receiver Brian Thomas Jr. in that spot, they guessed correctly because that's who they took with the pick they acquired from the Vikings, the pick the Vikings had gotten from the Texans several weeks ago, thinking they'd use it to get high up in the draft. Didn't need to. Used it to get up higher to get Dallas Turner, edge rusher. Jaguars get Brian Thomas Jr., a guy that Sims had as his number 2 receiver on the board, behind Malik Neighbors and ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. And look, we know what happened with the Jaguars in free agency and Calvin Ridley. They wanted to wait until after the league year began because that resulted in a lower draft pick going to the Falcons than otherwise. Unfortunately, Ridley took advantage of that opportunity to go to the Titans. So they had a need there. They get that need filled in Brian Thomas Jr., a guy that can help Trevor Lawrence get to that franchise quarterback level if he's going to do it. This is the year. Great in year 2, fell off in year 3. Another weapon to replace Calvin Ridley to help the Jaguars turn things around in 2024.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.